Okay, on this edition of the Penn State Blitz, we're going to talk about the Isaiah Humphries lawsuit against Penn State. We're going to talk about Penn State's place in next year's rankings after watching the Clemson LSU National Championship game. We've got more news on former Penn State offensive coordinator Joe Moorhead. And as always, we're going to finish with the Penn State football mailbag. Okay, Greg, usually we're pretty funny here at the start of our Penn State Blitz videos and podcasts, but we're going to talk about something fairly serious. It came out earlier this week. A former Penn State player, defensive back, Isaiah Humphries, filed a lawsuit against Penn State. James Franklin, Harrisburg High School's Damian Barber was mentioned, along with some other players, current and former. We really can't go too far into this discussion because we don't really know a lot just yet, but we got to talk about it. Isaiah Humphries spent, I think, 1 year at Penn State. He was in the 2018 recruiting class.
Yes.
Defensive back. Now at Cal, transferred out at the conclusion of the 2018 season.
So he committed to Penn State on New Year's Eve before the Rose Bowl. Okay. And then he stayed committed all that time, came to Penn State with the class of 2018, spent a year on campus, actually a little bit less than a year. November 28th, 2018, announced he was transferring out of the program. I guess one thing that made this all a little surprising was the note he wrote when he left, thanked Penn State for all the memories and all the friendships that he had made, how much he had learned. But, you know, there was a sentence in there, something about to keep my passion for football and keep growing. I have to look and play somewhere else. So, yeah, this lawsuit comes out on Monday of this past week after he sat out a season at Cal. Obviously, he makes accusations of hazing and harassment within the Penn State locker room and the Penn State football program. His lawyer, a Philadelphia-based Penn State graduate, was on the gymnastics team at Penn State. You know, talked to Dave Jones and said that, you know, it's a tough thing to do, I guess, to have a lawsuit like this, but he thinks that there's a case to be made here. We'll have to wait and see. Penn State's denied the allegations and accusations, has said that it conducted an investigation independent from its athletic department, that the Penn State police looked at the investigation and sent their findings to the Center County District Attorney, which declined to press charges. So at this point, Bob, I think it's pretty similar to where the Scott Lynch case sits. Former team doctor who was reassigned, and Wayne Sebastianelli was brought back in the mid, I guess it was April 2019, May or March 2019, something like that. In the sense of it'll just probably sit in court documents and legal filings for a while. Perhaps one day it'll get to a stage where, you know, there's some, I can't, you know, so many of these things settle before they get to depositions and discovery and all of that it wouldn't be surprising if this one is the same. However, Penn State could dig in and fight it to, you know, to try and protect its brand and the locker room and everything, you know, what goes on and everything like that. So we'll have to wait and see, you know, from the standpoint of where things go from here. It doesn't seem as if there'll be any additional repercussions or penalties to the players named in the lawsuit. At least that's not any. Penn State's given no indication of that yet. It said it found no, there was no hazing or anything of that nature going on. You know, obviously Isaiah Humphries and his family contend and have a different story. So at this point, we'll have to wait and see how the court stuff proceeds from here.
Yeah, just one thing I wanted to note was not long after the lawsuit became public, you had some current Penn State players coming out on social media. Former Penn State player who's not used to being on social media, Ryan Bates, had some strong takes.
Since deleted takes, but yes,
since deleted takes, but they were at the time they were very much in support of the Penn State program. Yeah. So we'll just see a couple of defensive backs, which was Humphries' position. Yeah, you're right. There's not a lot we can really talk about right now. Some things are going to have to play out, but disturbing allegations, and we're just going to, as things unfold, we'll be here to talk about them and report them. But right now, it's just kind of very, very surprising news that came out earlier this week. Let's roll it forward, though. There was also a national championship game that was concluded on Monday night. A home game, really, for LSU, the most in New Orleans. They beat Clemson 42-25, capped just a dream season. Played a very tough schedule, beat a very good Clemson team, destroyed a very good Georgia
good
team.
On Monday.
And just your thoughts on what you saw from the game, and maybe having seen Penn State, you know, go 11-2, playing some good teams tough. How you think Penn State stacks up with maybe what you saw from those two teams?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that struck me as I sat there and watched the game on Monday night, let's get one thing out of the way. They got to start this thing earlier, man. I mean, to have it end at 12:30, and keep in mind, the only reason it ended at 12:30 was because it was a blowout and there were no late game timeouts. There were no, stalling tactics or anything like that. Of course, no overtime. So, I mean, this game could have easily ended after 1 o'clock on the East Coast if it was close and competitive. So, LSU, I think you said it, the dream season. Joe Burrow, Joe Brady, the other offensive coordinator down there at Ojar. I mean, every button they pressed this past season was the right one. But, they have receivers that can get open. They have defensive backs who can run and play the ball in space. They have linemen who can get home with 3- and 4-man rushes. And they have offensive linemen who can blow holes open. Penn State does not have all of those things. They have some of them, but it definitely felt like those two teams were playing in a different airspace, I guess you could say, than everybody else in college football this year, outside of maybe Ohio State. And for Penn State, the next step, we've talked about it a lot, recruiting and making sure that you continue to get guys who can do stuff like that. But, above all else, and we saw it with Trevor Lawrence, 13 overthrown passes.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't have a quarterback,
laid an egg.
Yeah, if you don't have a quarterback that can play at a high level, and I mean, we're talking at the highest level of the game, you're not going to make it to the college football playoff unless you have just a hellacious defense that can score points itself and win games for you. But that, to me, was the biggest takeaway, that Penn State has a lot of areas it must improve in to reach the level of those teams, even if it was 11-2. And coming off of a very impressive 2019 season, there's still a lot of work left to be done.
I have two takeaways. First of all, I agree with you. The game was just too long. It probably doubled my bar tab, honestly, where I was. If had the game ended like 11:30, I could have skated out of there for maybe less than $70.
No,
wasn't meant to be. I was a little upset about that, but in all seriousness, you're talking about recruiting and talent, but I think we also saw what a very well orchestrated scheme by Joe Brady and the offensive minds at LSU to free up all that talent can do, I think, for a program. Because LSU, Greg, has always had a lot of really good athletes. You see it play out on NFL draft weekend all the time. Maybe they haven't had a lot of great quarterbacks, but Joe Burrow, no one really knew about Joe Burrow before this year. He was a second or third stream guy, I think, at Ohio State, obviously a talented guy, but in that scheme, you saw it right away. It was a perfect marriage, and I think that's also another thing moving forward Penn State fans want to look at and just see, how Kirk Ciarrocca's scheme, because it was a very good scheme at Minnesota, and it caused Penn State trouble.
Right.
And we'll see how much crisper this thing looks, I think, in the fall, because they certainly have some key components coming back on offense.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, even if you lose KJ Hamler. But, again, watching that, I was so impressed by both teams' wide receivers, have been all year, but when you see them on the same field together, it becomes even more impressive. But, LSU was able to get guys in space and let them work. And that was sometimes by separation, but sometimes it was just design, as you said. And if you're able to do that, you can turn even guys who maybe aren't 5-star future NFL first-round draft picks into reliable talent. So, he has a lot of work ahead of him. We're taping this Wednesday afternoon, so we don't know at this moment who Penn State's wide receivers coach will be. I would suspect that that'll be wrapped up sooner rather than later, but I guess James Franklin's in no real rush to, get that done unless he really wants to be. I mean, you can go out recruiting, but so be it. If you don't think the right guy is there, then you'll wait until you find him. But whoever the new receivers coach is, and the new offensive line coach, Phil Troutwine, and Kirk Ciarrocca, who also, of course, will coach quarterbacks, they have a lot of players that were very talented high school athletes who maybe haven't translated that game to the college level. So they got their work cut out for them. But on the other hand, you see the talent could possibly be there moving forward.
Yeah. We're about halfway home here on the Penn State Blitz. So that means only one thing to me. It means you some information to share with our audience.
Indeed. So the off-season rolls on, but not for us. We're here every week with the Penn State Blitz podcast.
Never for us.
Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your audio. You can find us there. Don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe.
Yep.
Leave some feedback for us. And if you're watching the Blitz, it's youtube.com/allpennstate for the video version of the podcast.
Okay. Moving right along here on the Blitz, let's talk a little bit about third down. Let's start with Penn State's final ranking.
Yeah.
I think very much of a surprise given kind of what we thought at the start of the year, where we thought maybe, hey, they might be able to be a top 15 team. They got a tough schedule, really tough in October. Got to play Ohio State, Michigan State haven't done well there. They go 10-2, play Ohio State, very tough, could have beat Minnesota.
Yeah.
And then they finished, I think, with a strong second half in the Cotton Bowl to get to 11-2.
Yeah.
Got a lot of good players coming back. I think number 9, was it in the AP rankings?
Both of them, yep.
9 in the AP rankings. I saw the Athletics way too early for 2020. Top 25 at the start. Stuart Mandel knows his stuff. He has him at number 6.
Yep.
So before we get to Joe Moorhead, just your thoughts on how they capped the year.
Yeah.
Could they have been higher, or did they get the ranking right, number 9?
No, I think that's about right. I mean, I think almost like much of the year where the college football playoff conversation, there was so much, grouping, I guess you could say. There wasn't much space between 6 and 10.
Right.
And I'm not sure that there is at the end of the year either. So it's funny. You look at Penn State, and maybe it feels like sometimes we're being too harsh on a team that finished 11-2 and in the top 10 when before the season started. Yep. 8-4 or 9-3 looked very likely, and it turns out that they were able to take care of some pretty weak opponents at times, but also take on some very good teams and either win those games or go almost to the wire with them. To me, just looking back over the 2019 season, I think the most impressive, the Ohio State game always just sticks with me because Will Levis came in, and I know they didn't win that game, but I don't know how many teams could have went on the road and then had to go to their backup quarterback and still at least had a fighter's chance in that game, even though maybe it didn't reflect that in the final score, or maybe if some people watched it. But yeah, I feel like number 9 is right, and they should again. To me, there's a couple things that have to be better in 2020 though for them to be higher than 9 at this time next year. It's secondary play. And it's obviously what Kirk Shiraka does with the offense and whether they can, become, I guess, maybe more consistent in that regard. And then it's, I won't let it go, special teams and Blake Gillikin. I mean, I just feel like you take for granted when you have a good punter until you have a bad one.
Right.
And Penn State's had some tough years at that position.
They have.
And just think how many games Penn State either stayed in or stayed ahead in, because he was able to flip the field and keep opponents at bay. They're going to have to obviously look at some guys for that job. Maybe it's Jordan Stout, maybe it's somebody else. But those are 3 keys to me, and you could go with a number of other different directions. But that's how you get from 9 to 6 or somewhere higher than that at this time next year.
My takeaway from that is that Greg Pickles' love for Blake Gillikin knows no bounds. And maybe there shouldn't be any bounds for that because he did have a great year. By the way, didn't Jordan Stout hit the Cotton Bowl,
the AT&T Stadium? Yeah,
He took out a light stanchion or something in the scoreboard. So he's got a pretty strong leg. James doesn't like to give people too much to do, but I think he can handle something other than kickoff specialist. Yeah. He's got to be in the mix for punter, doesn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they don't really have that many options otherwise. So unless Joe Lord finds himself another Jordan Stout in the transfer portal. Right. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what else you could be looking at there. There's one guy, we wrote about him last week, but he's a State College native, went to Connecticut, was the punter for a year, lost his job. He's in the transfer portal. Maybe they'll give him a look, but other than that, it's probably Stout all the way.
Okay, some other news real quick about Penn State former coaches and former grad assistants. Joe Moorhead linked with the Oregon OC job.
Yep.
I don't know if we talked about this last week, but we can mention it again. John Donovan. The Washington OC job.
Yeah.
And Joe Brady.
Yep.
Going to the NFL with the Carolina Panthers. He was a grad assistant. I think, wasn't he Joe Moorhead's guy either at Fordham or when he was at Penn State?
Yeah, so he was with Franklin in 15 and then Franklin and Moorhead in 16 and then went to work with the Saints and then ended up with LSU. So, yeah, we'll see if he's the wonder mind that he's been made out to be. Obviously, extremely talented coach, person, all of that, and it does not. It's striking to me that someone that young, you might as well go to the NFL if they're giving you the chance. You can always go back to college, but to get in on the ground floor of what Matt Rhule believes can be a quick turnaround for the Carolina Panthers. Sure. You got to take that chance at 30. So not surprised by that. John Donovan to Washington was a total. I mean, that might end up being worse than Bill O'Brien fake punting and I don't even want to get into that whole conversation again. But
I got some really good texts from Greg around 5:00 on Sunday. I'm just going to leave it at that. But yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead and make your point.
Yeah, I've just totally lost my train of thought.
We're talking about Johnny D.
Yeah, so, interesting that
rehabbed himself a little bit in Jacksonville.
Yeah, I guess he was the assistant running backs coach, and then he was an off-field analyst and an assistant running back. So yeah, that caught me off guard. I did not see that coming. But hey, good for him. Glad to see he's back in the college game. I don't know. I will be anxiously awaiting a Washington win total unders. Because that offense probably will be unimaginative and not score any points. So
wow, piling it on.
Oregon and Washington probably play each other this year.
I was waiting to get that in when Moorhead's Ducks play Johnny D's. What are they? The Huskies?
The Huskies. Yes.
I mean, I know you're going to be watching. I think your hate for John Donovan knows no bounds.
It's not hatred. It's just I just
disgust.
That's probably a better word. Yeah, I just don't.
He never did anything to you.
He didn't do anything to me. He's a very nice man, but I'm just not sure.
He didn't like seeing those offenses play.
Just not sure he's cut out to be an offensive coordinator at a place that has expectations, which Vanderbilt didn't, Penn State did, obviously, and Washington will as well. We'll see.
I can't wait for the Washington Huskies breakout in 2020 so we can replay this video. We might send it to John Donovan like a care package. I just have a feeling.
At the same time
about this moment we're talking about right now and John Donovan, but yeah, we'll see. Good for them. Good for Brady. Let's close now with the Penn State mailbag.
Yeah.
There's a lot we could talk about, but is there anything that's really sticking in your craw? Is this going to be about signing day? Is this going to be about something we just watched?
Yeah.
Where are you heading with this mailbag, young man?
Anywhere you'd like to go, Bob. Let's start with this. When you look at what's out there, as again, we're talking about this Wednesday afternoon, so by the time this hits the air, things could come up. But what would you, if you could pick your next bit of news to come out of Penn State, would it be a receivers coach? Would it be Shaka Toney's draft declaration? Would it be James Franklin's contract terms? Or would it be the fruits of this big recruiting weekend they have on tap?
To me, the thing that I'm not as curious about, I think, James's contract as some people are. I mean, I don't even know if they'll give out the particulars about maybe the assistant coaching upgrade.
Definitely won't.
They won't. So, I mean, to me, I'll pass on that. I've been a little bit curious about Shaka Toney almost since the Cotton Bowl ended. Yeah. I believe he put something out on Twitter shortly after the game saying he just hasn't made up his mind, and he's just been silent since then. If I'm not wrong, Greg, it's January 20th, the last day he has to declare. I think it's Monday.
I think that's right.
I'm almost positive that it is. I don't want to go into it too far because he could literally, after we get done and this gets
he could have done it by already. Yeah,
he could have made an announcement. But just the fact that we are now starting to creep into mid to late January, and the Cotton Bowl was played in late December, and we still don't know about him.
And classes started already.
What do you make of that?
I make that so Shaka seems like a pretty quiet kid.
Right.
Like the one thing that when teammates talk about him, they say that he in meeting rooms and on the field and in practice, he can, he might trash talk a little bit and get guys going, and nothing in a bad way, but he definitely seems to let his play do most of the talking.
So here's my thing for you, and I'll just put it to you this way: eventually there'll be strength and conditioning's coming up, and then it will be early into spring practice. And, we'll probably get a chance to talk to Dwight Galt, the strength coach, and then James Franklin will probably say something early in March about spring practice. Is there one or two players that are leaders in the clubhouse for maybe buzzworthy status, whether it's had a great winter conditioning session with Dwight, whether it's a true freshman or is it a young player, or is there a player you're going to be keeping your ear to the ground about early in spring that maybe can really help Penn State in fall? I have my guy, so I'm going to ask you first.
Guy or guys?
Guy or guy? It could be multiple.
All right, let's do it. Again, I am fascinated about what potential Keandre Lambert, the 4-star receiver out of Virginia who enrolled for the start of classes. I think he really could be a guy that steps in and plays a big role as a true freshman. And I know some people probably maybe don't want to hear that because we all thought Justin Shorter would do that. It didn't necessarily work out that way, but man, he is a special talent. I think
he's not from New Jersey, so he's got that going for him.
That's true. It's
the Jersey wideouts. That's what it is.
It is. I'm interested in Lambert. We'll see how that works out. He's one of my guys. I can't talk anymore, so I'm going to pass it over
to me.
That's
right. Good. See, this is good teammating.
Yeah.
To me, my guy is John Dunmore. I just remember. I think you were down with me in Florida. I think it was the day before the Citrus Bowl. Penn State lost to Kentucky. We saw Noah Kane. We saw Devin Ford. But I just remember watching him on the practice field against some really good corners. Just continuously dust them. He caught everything thrown his way. He looked a little bit. He's tall, but he's not very much filled out yet. I think he could add some good weight. But I just was really impressed with the way he ran his routes, the way he caught his passes, and he always seemed to be able to pass some good corners.
It's a rough mailbag segment.
I know. John Dunmore is a guy that I'm going to be looking to. I trust you because you're a recruiting guy when you talked about Keandre. And also just the running back room in general is going to be fascinating. So we'll see how all of that goes, I think, in the coming weeks. Hopefully we'll have some more news about the lawsuit. We just don't know, but we're not going to really say anything more about that.
Yep.
And with all that said, I think it's a wrap for this Penn State Blitz.